This is the English Suite, the voice of Widener English and Creative Writing. I'm Jim Esch. On this episode of the English Suite, we feature a conversation with Dr. Jessica Guzman and Ciana Bowers, the editor-in-chief of Widener Ink, Widener's literary print journal. Jessica and Ciana have an interesting story to tell about how they resurrected Widener Ink from the ashes of last year, 2020, when COVID-19 shut everything down at Widener University. You'll also hear some readings from the magazine by Widener writers Ciana Bowers, Nakwana Letman, Gabrielle Norris, Amy Schwartz, and Luke Curran. Jessica Guzman, welcome back to the English Suite. You are brand new to Widener. What a weird time to be starting a new job. I can't even imagine what you've been going through. It's strange in and of itself for all of us who've been here for a while, but for someone brand new, wow. And you, I think you have experience from previous work of sort of maybe doing literary magazines. Is this true?
Yes.
Yes. So I'm just curious. Then you were asked to be the advisor of Widener Ink, our on-campus print magazine. And we did not publish that last spring as normal because the global pandemic hit and everything froze. So it was quite an odd year to be picking up that assignment. And I'm just curious if you have any good stories to tell about how did you pull this together? How did you find your staff? How did you start from basically nothing or less than nothing and then get caught up to the point where you actually were able to publish a print edition of Widener Ink this spring, which is an amazing accomplishment. How did that all happen?
Yeah, I mean, I will say it was quite a wild ride, or as wild as one can get, I suppose, in a pandemic where you mostly don't leave your place of residence. One of the first difficulties was just getting a staff together because understandably, I think a lot of students, I should say it's been amazing how many students have risen to the occasion because I can't blame them for, perhaps not wanting to be as involved in clubs as usual, given, the changes to everyone's lives. So many students are not only now doing their studies, but also concerned with other elements, right? Like, now they're caretakers when they're home or they have other responsibilities. And, at first it was a little bit of a question. I really wondered, how are we going to get students to work on these journals? But the staff that came together was just phenomenal. And I have to give so much credit to Ciana, our editor-in-chief this year. She did such a wonderful job. Despite really not having very much prior experience, she worked on Widener Ink last year as a reader, but she didn't have a hand in the making of the print publication. She did not have any kind of leadership role at that time. So for her to step in as editor-in-chief this year in a remote environment, in a pandemic, and to just take all of this on, start learning new technology she was not familiar with yet, with Acrobat and just all of those things. It was really phenomenal. So I think just to say, how did it happen? Because there was a great staff, first and foremost, is definitely how it happened.
So we're here with Ciana Bowers, the editor-in-chief of Widener Ink. Ciana, what year are you at Widener? Are you now a sophomore?
I'm a sophomore, yeah.
How did you even become editor of Widener Ink?
Well, after last year, I wanted to get more involved in the creative writing major because I was doing a lot of stuff for communications, my other major. So I wanted to join basically everything. So I went to the meeting, the interest meeting, and we didn't have an editor for Widener Ink, and I was the only one that worked on it last year because I was a reader for them. I tried to be something else, but I didn't get voted in. But so I emailed Dr. Guzman afterwards and said I was interested. And then nobody else, I guess, wanted to be editor. So I got the position for it.
And so was this your first time editing a literary magazine? Did you do any of this in high school?
It was my first time. Well, because in high school, we didn't really have any publications to work on. No newspaper, no nothing. But like I did, well, we had a yearbook, but that was sort of like a class. But yeah, I didn't work on it any other time. So this was a learning experience for me.
How did you get started? I mean, I guess you took the helm last fall and you were gathering submissions. Did you get guidance from Dr. Guzman? Like, how did you even start learning how to do any of this?
Well, I think in the beginning, before we would have meetings, she would tell me, like, we would meet up to talk about what to talk about that meeting. So I knew going in, I knew what to talk about. And then we would go over the schedule for how Widener Ink is supposed to be run, like when we should take submissions, when to proofread, when to do this, when to do that. So I sort of knew what to do based on that schedule and how to conduct the meetings because we would talk about it beforehand.
What were some of the biggest challenges you faced this year as editor?
Well, first, we didn't have any of the passwords to the email account or the Instagram, and we didn't have any of the templates or anything for Widener Ink. That's usually in the Widener Ink office, or Adobe InDesign. But thankfully, my classes from communications, we were able to get Adobe Creative Suite, so I was able to get Adobe InDesign to work on the journal at home. And I was able to go to the Widener Ink office, but we weren't able to get on the computer there, so we couldn't get any of the templates or anything. So I had to make a new template. I tried to reach out to some people for the password, but we couldn't get the password. But then I figured out how to get into the Gmail just by resetting the thing. So I was able to get on there.
In terms of stories, I think the most fun story, or I don't know, it's fun and funny in retrospect. It was the difficulties of trying to get into the office on campus. It turns out that Widener Ink's office, it's actually a really cool space and a great place for the staff in person times to get together, have meetings. There's a computer in there that already has all the software downloaded on it, that has previous copies of all of the journals. There's boxes of old journals in there. I mean, it's a really cool space, but it's already a challenge trying to get to campus. Now it's a little bit better, but especially throughout a good chunk of the school year, it was a challenge, understandably, because of safety requirements. And then the Widener Ink office happens to be in this basement level of one of the residence halls that is not accessible any other way except this back door that has a separate key. And every time I would go to campus to try to get something from that office, it was always funny because I would get campus safety to help me out, and they always kind of struggled to open the door because no one has access to it. It's not really being used because of the pandemic, and they don't have keys for it. Not all of the public safety officers had keys for it. So it was always a little bit of I had to announce myself when I arrived. Different people would need to come and try their keys out. It was kind of a funny event. And Ciana got to come on one of those trips so that she could get physical copies of the journal to look at as she makes her decisions about, how we wanted the issue to look. It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Sounds like an adventure.
It was nice, though, to have an excuse to see campus.
I remember, I think we had a meeting at some point. It was some department meeting, and this might have been back in the fall, and you said something to the effect of, like, you didn't even know what the journal looked like. Like, you had no physical copies from previous years. And we were saying, oh, I think there's copies in the English suite, but nobody had been there because we've all been locked out. And we were trying to tell you how to find them. And I don't know if you ever did find the print copies. I guess once you got into the Widener Ink office, you found some.
I did. I was able to get several copies of very recent issues in the Widener Ink office, but it was It was funny. It was kind of funny. And I think in a strange way, it was nice because while it was incredibly helpful, I think, for the staff and for me as the advisor to be able to see a physical copy and to be able to see what the journal normally looked like, it's also really interesting to brainstorm without that because it gives you the opportunity to really imagine what might be possible. And so I remember meeting with Janine McKnight, who, is a huge help with Widener Ink. Janine being over in university relations and helping a lot with, using the software, sending the issue off to the printer, that kind of technical aspect. And she was answering so many questions for all of us about things like, what if we wanted to put photos this way? What if we put photos that way? Because in a strange way, we could imagine anything since we didn't have any physical copies to imply that there was a certain way it needed to be done.
And do you want to describe the issue contents for the audience? Like what it includes stuff from the previous year, correct?
It does. So they had already started putting together last year's issue, but it hadn't made its way very far in terms of an actual document. So when Ciana and the rest of this year's staff took over, a lot of the staff readers spent time kind of talking through possibilities, giving their thoughts on what they think might look good for layouts, reading through this year's submissions. Ciana had the task of really looking at all of what we had from last year and taking the pieces that had already been accepted and, trying to match them. Some of them, they no longer had names on them, even though they'd been accepted. So, it's really interesting reading this year's issue because as a double issue, we've got all of these works from students from last year and this year, and a few of them just say they're written by anonymous because we don't know who they belong to. And in the pandemic, it was a real challenge to try to track down a lot of the writers. I remember I took a few of the titles and mentioned them in my classes. In one of our classes, Ciana talked about some of the works, asking if anyone recognized them, if maybe they belonged to someone in that room that was expecting an issue of Widener Ink to come out with their name on it. So it's a really kind of interesting artifact of an issue at this point, to really reflect the strangeness of the year and resilience, I hope, of the year, of us despite this year.
Once I got into the email, I went to the Google Docs and they already had what was accepted and what wasn't accepted. So it was just for me to send out the emails telling them that they have been accepted for Widener Ink.
Did you have to teach yourself in design, or did you already have? I mean, that's not an easy program to just pick up right away. Like, how did you learn that?
Well, I had a workshop with Janine McKnight for how to lay it out, but it was pretty much simple. I watched YouTube videos to if Widener didn't understand, I would watch YouTube videos. So I was learning from her, but I was also teaching myself how to use it.
Thank God for YouTube. I mean, they really are so instructional. It's in the old days you had to read manuals and they never made sense, or they never answered the questions that you really had. I used to write manuals in a former life, and I know that how hard that can be. But these people do these amazing YouTube videos now, and it's to be able to watch someone operate the application is sort of invaluable. That's great. It's really a great story that you got this out. And I assume it's been distributed amongst at least some of the campus population. How did they get it out this spring?
Yes. So in the University Center building, where a lot of the student organizations are housed, I know that issues have made their way across that building right now. There's a box that occasionally one of our wonderful staff members, Gabby Norris, mans because she's on campus this semester. She's staying in one of the residence halls. So, she will occasionally sit and hand out issues to anyone who wants to stop by. We're also hoping that people will stop by again next year once we're hopefully in person. Fingers crossed, it looks like we might be in person in the fall semester. So we are hoping that people will come by then as well and pick up their copy.
How long did it take you to work through all the submissions?
Well, we could look over our submissions on during winter break. But like we had a lot of submissions this year, and we had a lot of green, and then we had a lot of yellows that could be in green if they were had like they're like a point away. So we were deciding if we should add those in, but it would have been the journal would have been much bigger than it was if we added in those yellows.
There's even some artwork in here. Is it all black and white photos, I think?
Yeah,
Or
they're all black
artwork?
and white.
Black and white art. Color cover, which is beautiful. Who designed the cover?
My sister designed the cover. It was like early. I kept telling her, I was like, join Widener Ink. You can do the art for the cover. She didn't join, but she made a cover. She did that like I guess when I said we were needed a cover, so she did that for us, and the staff liked it, so we kept that as the cover.
Awesome. And what's your sister's name?
Christina Bowers.
Christina, thanks for the cover. What did you provide any guidance to say, hey, we want so that to describe for our audience, the cover is a lion because Widener's mascot is the pride. And the lion is wearing a face mask emblazoned with Widener ink on front. And there's some like cool sort of geometric designs, and you've got like the school colors blended in there. And it's very striking. I was wondering if you gave any guidance to Christine and said, hey, this is what we want on the cover, or did you just say, come up with something, let's see what happens?
I didn't know why I wanted the cover, but I just told her, when you get a cover, just make cover. She said, I have an idea. And then she sent it to me, and I was like, I really like this.
It's great when it works out that way. But yeah, it's like just the cover says, this is the world in spring 2021. Like the face mask really is perfect, I think. And we'll always remember this year. Let's listen now to some readings from the magazine. Back in mid-April, Ciana hosted a release party over Zoom, and that event was recorded, and I'd like to share a few clips from that. So you're going to hear from some Widener student writers now.
To kick things off, I guess I'll read first. I'm going to read an excerpt of Bubbles. I squeezed the scent of original bath soap into my sponge, mixing the fumes of lavender and bath soap throughout the air in the perfect tango, using the bathroom as my personal diffuser as the scent mixes in with the fog, creating my own aromatic scent to relieve my stress. I scrub my arms as I stare into the pool of water surrounding me, staring hard into the water to find myself, wondering where the old me had gone, hoping I find the answers within this reflection that I can't seem to find, only the suds of lavender-infused foam. I wash every curve, crack, and crevice, letting the sponge explore and wash away all the stress and exhaustion from my body that comes from life, worrying about the future and past instead of the present. It keeps me up at night. At least that's what I like to say instead of the lack of sleep my body fails to produce because of insomnia. Relying on cups of peppermint tea to ease myself, to hush the thoughts that eat away at me. I soak myself into the water, enjoying the last hint of warmth that flows through the currents, hoping that tomorrow will be better, that my thoughts won't try to drown me, but I know I'll be back here yet again, greeted by the scent of lavender bubbles. Next we have Naquana. She's going to read for us.
The name of my poem is called What's the Difference? What's the difference between a Black man and a white man in these bad lands, both plagued by their addiction to the coca leaf and destructible greed to get their next hit they'd steal from their seed? Looked upon as rotting flesh, their families mourn and grieve, but no one understand their tragedies. They've been locked in the box because of these slang rocks, and when going through withdrawal, they want to quit but can't stop. Reality is harsh to these fallen stars, not given a second chance to a fresh start. So they suck the glass stick to feel like they fit. It's easier to stay high, embracing ignorance is their bliss. So can someone please tell me, What's the difference between a white man and a black man who can't stand to see the hurt and pain in their mother's eyes, knowing she can't sleep at night, waiting for her child's demise, not wanting to see her fatherless child be this wild, lost in what seems like an eternity of lies. She prays night and day her baby will find his way, because no amount of memories can replace her kissing her child's face or hearing his voice and cries. She prayed, Lord, why? Wishing she could turn back the hands of time to change what made her baby kiss the glass stick to try, killing their chances at a successful life with more chances than strikes. Scars of pain shatter their race and erase the color lines. Death sees no race, creed, or color, just the next life on his long list of those to die. Not caring about age or dreams, he's the end to all end, filled with supremacies handed down by God. The only difference is in who will cry for these lost souls death stole. So there is no difference between a white man and a black man, filled with the same insecurities and choices, you see. Death take identities. He knows of no bigotry. Thank you.
Next, we have Gabby.
I'm going to read an excerpt from my piece called Scooter's Loss. This is just the last little chunk of it. We argued the very last time we talked. After 7 long years, I cannot remember what we were fighting about, but there is nothing in this world I regret more. I took him for granted as a child. I cherished the idea that he would always be there, coaching me through my homework and reading to my elementary school classes on Wednesdays. How could I have left him for the final time with words of anger? He was brilliant. He was ambitious. He was the most loving father I had ever met. How lucky I was that half of my heart was made of him. I was young. I was naive. I did not tell him enough that he meant the world to me. How selfish I was for assuming he would always stay here with me. It rained the day of his funeral. I always thought that was a good thing, that the universe cried with me at the loss of such a wondrous soul, as visibly crushed as I felt inside. I held his hand, cold and pale like porcelain, as my world fell to pieces around me. I looked at half of my heart lying in front of me, hair as wild and dark as ever. My mom took me back to his house later to take my favorite mementos. Tears fell as often as raindrops. Habit drove me to check the armchair where he took his naps. He wasn't there. Not the last time I checked, not this time, and never again.
Okay, next we have Amy.
Hi, everyone. So I will be reading Maimed Green. I'm reading this one because this one I feel like has been the hardest for me to get published, and I'm really glad that Widener Ink picked it up and published it. So here it is. Every blade is a sample, becomes a sward. Bursting from the lot, the crowd steps on the blades of grass, only to dig in deeper. A cute dagger afflicts the field. Footprints emit a cicatrix. I wrote that in Professor Oakman's class around a year and a half ago, and her project was for me to write about nature, so I try to make it as dark as possible. So that was my goal, and I feel like I succeeded, and I'm really glad that Widener Ink published it, so thank you very much. So I will read Sugar Pill. Oh, how this day has come to haunt my own head. 1 trillion spiders crawl down my left leg. I've almost lost that feeling of yearning for that sense to reemerge. It is dangerous, as I am to myself, as I am to others, as I am to myself, as I am to failing to remember, antiseptic for my brain. Severed slices plunged to the ground, scavenging the bleached surface. No hope in finding these little white pills. Placebo effect. Voices scream inside my skull, thrashing my head, seizing on the ground. I'm a danger to myself as I am to others. I'm a danger to myself as I am to others. Thank you.
Lastly, we have Luke. He's going to read first.
I'm going to read a poem I wrote titled Space, and I also was in Professor Oakman's class for this. Our universe, under our clouds of consciousness, holds billions of stars in its hands, ever expanding, just like our minds are. Black holes, the omnivores of space, consume everything. Black holes, like puppies, eat anything in their sight. Our sun is a light from the heavens, sneaking through seams like water through a slit in a swimming pool. The earth is the one beating heart of this universe. The lustrous life living here is heaven. The cold touch of space grasps planets by its fingertips, but space itself is not soft. It is not gentle. It is hell. Thank you.
Thanks again to Ciana Bowers, Naquana Letman, Gabrielle Norris, Amy Schwartz, and Luke Curran for reading your work, and congratulations on your publications. What are your plans for next year? I mean, I'm sure you're already thinking ahead, and where do you see the magazine going forward?
Well, we're hoping to maintain our status as a print journal, because one of the things I talked about with the staff is how important it is to have a kind of physical artifact, the way that a physical artifact can exist, not necessarily better, but just in a different mode than digital artifacts do. And also, it's such a great experience for the staff themselves. There's so many different journals and different ways that students can professionalize and gain experience working on these publications here at Widener. And it feels like one of Widener Ink's, or maybe one of the special things I should say about Widener Ink, and one of the things that students get out of working on Widener Ink that they can't with the other journals, is that it's in print. So that is definitely something that the staff feels very strongly about maintaining. We're also thinking about possible features. Nothing is set in stone yet, so we're not sure what those features will be, but we talked about ways to get involved with the community more, ways to perhaps have a themed feature in certain issues, perhaps, working with or thinking alongside Jane Thompson's work that she does with the Chester community and the Chester Writers House. So really looking for ways to make Widener Ink more of a presence in the city of Chester, perhaps even dropping copies off at the library. That's something we don't know yet. Last I talked to Ciana, I don't know that we'd heard yet, but we were thinking maybe they would like some issues, make this something that's read outside of Widener's specific community.
It's all wonderful ideas. Yeah. Congratulations on all the success with Widener Ink this year.
Thank you.
You all did an amazing job. And if students at Widener want to submit to the magazine next year, how should they go about doing that? And when are you going to be open for submissions in the fall?
I would like to get submissions like as soon as possible. So we still have to figure out the guidelines for that, which I'm hoping we do soon, so that way we can have submissions can start coming in early as like the first week of school. That's what I'm hoping. But they should send it to the Widener Ink email address, widener.ink@gmail.com.
And ink is spelled INK, right? Widener.ink@gmail.com. Cool.
And we're going to have an interest meeting in May, I think the 12th, so that people who are interested for next year can come and learn about the journal. And then we can contact them if they're still interested before we have our official meeting.
Let's give our staff members credit. I have a copy, the PDF copy of your magazine here, and we'll just sort of review who worked on it. You were editor-in-chief, so Ciana Bowers was editor. But then you had 6 editors: Patricia Badu, Chloe DeFlumery, Naquana Letman, Gabby Norris, Chiamaka Uda, and Isa Wilson. And then faculty advisors were Jessica Guzman and Janine McKnight. Now, in addition to Widener Ink, you've been very busy with Blue and Gold. True? You
Yep.
want to just tell our audience what Blue and Gold is?
Blue and Gold is Widener's student-run news website. We report Widener news and Chester news. Yeah, we had to basically start over Blue and Gold from the ground up this year because last year wasn't really a thing because the old editor wasn't really taking it serious. So we had to restart, basically.
Yeah, and I've looked at the site and it looks great. And it's just nice that it's back up and running again. So you're doing a wonderful job with that. And you're also the blog manager for the Blue Route. So you've been writing lots of pieces between our issues. Like we like to put stuff on the blog. And how's that experience been going for you?
It's going good. It forced me to think more creatively, I guess, to think of some ideas for blog posts and stuff. I'm trying to be more not only write about creative writing tips and stuff, but more about just creative writing in general too.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, thanks for all the help that you've been providing. You really stepped into the breach this year in a big way, and people are noticing that. What do you like about the job of being editor of Widener Ink? What are some of your favorite aspects?
I like everything besides conducting the meetings because I'm shy. So talking in front of people, even if it's on the computer, is not really my thing because I'm used to just standing back and listening to everybody else talk. But I like really everything from learning how to use the software to emailing the contributors. I like making the graphics and stuff for the Instagram, the flyers for just to get submissions and the launch party. I like everything. Is my favorite part.
And were you doing social media for Widener Ink too? Were you?
Yeah, I was doing social media.
And I follow Widener Ink, and there was lots of posts on Instagram and lots of activities. And I think you even did you bring some alumni in to do talks? And what was that all about?
So, because I'm in creative writing for publication. And one of the people talked about having social media engagement. So I was thinking of ways to have engagement for Widener Ink on social media. And I created a list of things. And one of my ideas was going live and having alumni or staff talk about creative writing in some way. So we would host those online and then post them on the page in case somebody missed it.
Yeah. Well, Ciana, thanks so much for giving us the update on Widener Ink, and congrats on banging out this issue. It's really wonderful achievement.
Thank you for talking to me.
The English Suite is produced by Jim Esch with assistance from Ciana Bowers, Chloe DeFlumery, Christina Giska, Matt Lomas, Gabby Naras, and Shapres Seimarai. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please consider subscribing and sharing with your friends and followers. To send feedback or get more information about Widener English and creative writing, email us at widenerenglishsuite@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.